Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Turjo Talks. I'm your host, Turjo. Our guest today is dressing some of the most powerful figures in sports, entertainment, and business. He was named America's Best Dressed Man by Esquire. He's the founder and creative director of a top men's atelier in New York, staying close to his roots as a New York native. He's a social media influencer with 63,000 followers on Instagram. By the way, if I get 10 likes on Instagram, I tell my kids that your dad's a legend. So you take it for what it is. He's a master of bespoke craftsmanship, a visionary in luxury branding, a top name in men's fashion, a tastemaker, luxury real estate expert, innovative entrepreneur, and a true icon in the fashion world. Our guest is none other than Angel Ramos of New York. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, a lot of that was probably heavily inflated, but
I will take it. That was a mouthful, but
I will take it.
More than anything, Angel is probably one of the coolest people on Instagram for sure. And I talk about you a lot, and it's funny. I was just talking to Eric about it. That your sense of fashion, right? It's more of a style than fashion trend. I could see wearing your clothes 20 years from now and say, that is vintage, that is cool. It's very Ralph Lauren, but bespoke.
It's very flattering, yeah. Thank you.
And I mean that.
I mean, he's one of my, if not he is one of my top 3 style icons. I mean, I emulate as much as I can from him in terms of branding, building a world, and obviously building a brand that kind of can surpass my being.
Right. No,
essentially.
You do it so well, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This is an honor.
Yeah,
honestly.
thank you for having me.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about, who's Angel Ramos? Where are you from? I know you're from New York, but how did all this get started? Who are you?
So I'm originally from New York, born in Brooklyn, New York, Williamsburg to be exact.
Oh, really? Okay.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, although I think it was always cool. But, born in Brooklyn, New York, raised between Brooklyn and Puerto Rico. My parents are from Puerto Rico. And yeah, I mean, I've always been an artist. My mom's a dressmaker, so I've been exposed to an environment where I've been used to seeing someone being creative and someone make everything. My mom was a seamstress, and not only did she make like couture wedding dresses, she also did the cake.
Right.
So her little kind of hustle was she could make your wedding cake and your wedding dress.
Yeah.
And
one-stop shop.
That's right. Right. And so I grew up with that in that environment. My dad was a jeweler.
So you got easy. So you get no. I now you know what this is over.
So and
it's in the genes. We should have brought their parents on instead.
Right. And my dad obviously was always a dapper. Gentlemen. They went out a lot. They were very social, and so I always saw my dad kind of come home from after an evening out with my mother and be very meticulous with his shoes and shoe tree, shining his shoes and all that stuff, which is kind of funny because I'm not that meticulous with my stuff. And unfortunately I have an overabundance of what he had because I'm in the business.
Right.
But and so then, I went to the High School of Art and Design. The idea was, growing up, I was an athlete. And so I played baseball, and I didn't think that I would ever end up in this business. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. Right. And when that did not work out, I dabbled into luxury real estate, ironically, here in Atlanta. This is where I started my real estate career with Sotheby's International Realty. Okay. And Atlanta Fine Homes, I should say.
Right.
And I did that for 6-7 years, and thankfully, because of Esquire's Best Dressed kind of contest, it drove me into the business.
Cool.
I tried to get into business. So when that happened, I was trying to get into business, and I applied for positions in several different places, Ralph Lauren being one of them, between Atlanta, New York, even Charleston, because I lived in Charleston for 2 years. I tried to apply for Paul Stewart, and then someone else. The main place that I applied for here, aside from Ralph Lauren, was Sid Mashburn when they first opened, and Sid, was I didn't have any experience at all, and he didn't have any interest in hiring me. And what he ended up telling me was, look, right now you're not a good fit, for our kind of the world we're building, which at that time I didn't understand. And I'm so thankful that he did say that, because it allowed me to build a brand that you know who you are and who you're not so much that you can hire around that and obviously build a culture around that. So that made me start my own brand. Right. And that's when we started. At that time, it was Angel Bespoke.
Got it. That's so cool. It's funny because I was with Sid Mashburn a couple year ago or so, whatever it was. I don't remember now. But I was telling him, I'm like, this guy, Angel, out of New York, he reminds me of what you were a long time ago, that just the buzz around, it's like a cult following almost, right? It's a culture. And he's like, Angel is a very dapper man, which is definitely true. Yeah. Definitely true. So you piddle around and, from real estate to fashion, and obviously Esquire kind of got you going there. But how do you just go into the world, right? Of like, it's a lot. Fashion is very competitive, and everyone wants to be different, but it is so hard to be different.
Sure.
So what made you take that leap?
So because no one was hiring me, and I was so desperate to get into this business and leave real estate in general, the idea was that, how do I get into this business? And I had an opportunity. This is back in 2009, I think, or no, 2010. I had an opportunity to work with like a custom clothing company. That's amazing. You're a legend. Thank you. A custom clothing company that was based. They had kind of salespeople all over the place. Right. I was based here in Atlanta. And it was in the moment where I was moving to Miami. Okay. And so my wife and I were moving to Miami. And the owner of the company at the time, I was a good friend of his, and he said, hey, why don't you do this? Come work for us. We can leverage the fact that you just won Esquire's Best Dressed Man. I will then put you in a position where you're traveling around the country, meeting with like all these top clients, because I'll set it up. Right. You'll learn the business, and after 1 year, you can do whatever you want. Right. You can take off, you can stay if you want. Right. And it was great. I did that. That company was a custom clothing company that really kind of specialized in the service-based business, where whatever if you can dream it, they would copy it or design it. Right. Or they would make it for you, not design it. But and so the idea for me was, when I was there, I was like, how do I, work in this environment, but operate as if I'm, creating a brand already. Right. And again, just from, studying the likes of like Ralph Lauren and the greats that came before us, my idea there was like, let's create an image, let's create a world around myself so that, one, people want to really just buy the idea of working with Angel. Right. And then as I keep learning, I can kind of develop my style, which, to be honest with you, I think style is always, you're always developing style. And my style when I first started in the business was different in 2010 than it was in 2012. Right. And my style kind of has progressed and changed, due to environment. When when I started the business, I was in Miami, and I was very colorful. And in those days, it was kind of like the hashtag menswear kind of era, where everyone was wearing like very, very trim trousers, very high trousers. Jackets were short, jackets were tight, jackets were colorful. And then I moved back to New York, because there was a moment where, after 4 years of operating Angel Bespoke in Miami, I knew that if I wanted to grow this thing, I had to go back to like the capital of fashion, and I needed to be taken seriously. Right. I needed to go back to New York, and so my wife and I moved back to New York. We wanted to start a family, which ironically we did the backwards thing. No one ever goes back to New York to start a family, right? But I went back to New York to essentially plant my kind of feet there with this company, with our brand, and be known as Angel is based out of New York.
Right.
And so we did that. And I had to be honest with you, I had a hard time.
Sure.
Obviously, aside from the business standpoint of view, which is, I went back to New York as if I was never from there.
Right.
Because even though I grew up there, I wasn't from there in terms as an adult.
Right.
So when I went back there, I didn't know anyone.
Right.
I didn't have any clients in New York. And so...
And by the way, competition.
Correct. And you're starting from scratch.
Right.
And so I had to not only start from scratch and kind of learn the lay of the land. And New York is obviously huge and there's enough clients for everyone.
Right.
Plus more.
Right.
I still had to kind of understand how to do business there. And then I had this weird kind of season of having essentially an identity crisis because I had this very colorful, flamboyant
Miami vibe.
Miami kind of menswear aesthetic.
Right.
And then we moved to New York and it was this is not going to work here.
No.
And you can't work with can't work with hedge fund guys
No.
and gallerists and all these different cool people of New York and look like you're the Miami kind of showboat.
No.
And so it took me 2-3 years to kind of not only build a client base in New York, but understand that I needed to develop a style that was kind of timeless and a little bit more polished. And then I went through a season of having this kind of very ultra tailored tie every day, pinstripe suit, again, trying to
Wolf of Wall Street banker.
Yeah. I was trying to almost I want these finance guys to kind of relate to me.
Right.
And so I'm gonna dress like them in obviously in a more kind of tailored way.
Right.
So we did that, and everything went well, and we were growing, and then obviously the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And that's when I found what is the real Angel.
Right.
That I think will be the one that, let's say in 25 years, people will be like, oh, I'm so happy I have this piece from him.
Yeah.
Because after the pandemic, when the world was kind of turning very casual, although I didn't go casual, but it allowed me to develop a kind of an aesthetic and a style that was very louche. And I took my love for tailoring, which was kind of this 1920s and 30s aesthetic of high-waisted trousers, a drapier kind of fuller leg, and this very free and easygoing kind of way of dressing.
This is still when men were wearing skinny jeans.
Correct.
Right.
And I said, this is Angel now.
Right.
The Angels, we wear ties when we want to wear ties, which is very rare. But my goal was to leave COVID and say, I want a kind of two-way street. I have this first lane, which is this very loose, creative and kind of gregarious style of wearing easy luxury tailoring.
Right.
Where, the modern gentleman can look at it and go, oh, that looks great. I can do that. And then I wanted to do black tie, and I wanted to be known for black tie. And what I realized was that if you want to be known for black tie and you want to be synonymous with black tie, people have to see you in black tie all the time.
Yeah.
And I just started going out to places. I mean, it was strange at first because everyone was like, you're overdressed, whatever. And I was that guy that most people, it wasn't a good thing.
Right.
And so I started dressing up in black tie and really kind of taking pages out of Tom Ford's and Ralph Lauren's book and then old kind of figures that I have followed cinematically for years, Godfather Part 2, Godfather Part 1, Once Upon a Time in America. And I took those images that I've had in my kind of memory bank for, 15, 20 years and created what Angel Ramos New York is today.
Right. No, it's super cool. If I had to explain to the audience that might not be into fashion or in fashion, it doesn't matter. But the way I look at Angel Ramos today, at least, right, or your aesthetics, it's really Tom Ford and Pharrell had a child, and Angel Ramos came out, right? That's what it looks like.
That's great.
Yeah, no, it really is. And look, love Tom Ford. Before your brand, your line, Tom Ford was black tie, right?
Right.
However, and I was just having this conversation, as a matter of fact, that Tom Ford, like when I wear a Tom Ford tux or something, it's like you're so stiff. But with Angel, you can wear a black tie and go to Papaya and have that hot dog. That's a great picture, by the way.
Thank you.
It's very McQueen of you, right? But I mean that, like, you made it so casual where men could actually enjoy and have fun and be ultra dapper. So that, like Ralph Lauren, he's wearing a tux, wearing New Balance sneakers with it.
Right.
But he doesn't care.
And I learned it from him.
Right.
This kind
It's
of
amazing.
juxtaposition of being able to take something so delicate and so revered in this kind of world of elegance, and yet be playful with it.
Right.
And it's that picture, the papaya dog, which means a lot to me because one, it is my childhood. It is the ideology of my childhood of growing up. And you're from New York, growing up in Williamsburg, going to school in Manhattan. My parents only sending me to school with so much money, and I still remember it was like $1.50 for a hot dog and like a papaya drink from Grace Papayas, and so that was actually shot by one of my good friends, Fred Castleberry, and we had this idea of like, hey, me being this local New York kid who grew up in like not the slums, but like in a very in a low income neighborhood.
Right.
How can I kind of express who I am now? And it's this idea of, even though I might have this elegance and this style, I'm still from here.
From here, yeah.
And this is, and the
not ashamed
idea,
of it.
right? And the idea of that picture is, it's either coming or going. It's either I'm going to this evening event that I'm probably not going to eat. They're not going to have a lot of food, so I'm getting a hot dog prior.
100%.
Or I did go and they didn't have a lot of food, so I need a hot dog before I go back home.
Right. By the way, it's one of my favorite places to eat still.
They changed it, unfortunately.
I know, and I remember that the papaya shaker, what they had,
right.
it was so good. But I got married really early, so when I was dating my wife, I was 19 or so. I remember one of the dates we go to at Papaya, and I love hot dogs. And we sat down, and two of us ordered 19 hot dogs, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and waiting. And it's like everyone behind me is getting their food. I'm like, what the hell's my food, man? So I go, I'm like, what's my? They're like, we're waiting for the rest of the party. I'm like, no, it's just two of us. And I remember Habiba looking at me, she's like, are you going to have 18 hot dogs? I'm like, yeah. And it was like $3 for $1 or $2 for $1 back then, whatever it was. Yeah. Took it down. So
that's impressive.
Yeah, I probably could do 2 now. This was many moons ago, but Papaya.
I don't think I've ever eaten more than like 2 hot dogs.
Oh man, come on, you're missing it. But no, iconic picture. You know what? I gotta get that picture and get it autographed and get it framed here. That is a cool picture. It is so cool. But everything you're talking about now, that iconic picture. And you just don't really care to be someone else. You're comfortable under your own skin now.
Right.
All that is confidence, right? What did the pandemic do for you that brought you to that next level of confidence?
I mean, I think the pandemic, I actually say, especially me being a man of faith, I say that God took the pandemic and like turned me inside out.
Right.
Like he one is I'm an extremely extroverted person.
Right.
My personality is very, very outgoing, very kind of, not kind of anything, but very aggressive, very abrasive and gregarious. And so for people like me, the pandemic was brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, to be locked inside, and obviously I was with my family, thank God, with my kids, but like, I mean, I'm so used to being around people that like not having that, it allowed me to kind of like sit down, look in the mirror and go, okay, who do I want to be when this is over?
Right.
And when I come out of this, like, what do I want to turn into? And that is when, I got to spend a lot of time by myself, praying and even speaking with my wife and kind of reconnecting with my wife, where my wife has been like I always call her my muse, and she's my biggest fan. Yeah. And the idea was that we would have these conversations, and she was like, maybe this is an opportunity for you to like, we exit this pandemic and you do whatever you want, and people either buy it or they don't. Okay. And because if you keep trying to do what is the industry standard or the status quo or what you think is going to sell,
Yeah.
she's like, you're never going to be happy.
You can't. Yeah.
And I honestly, I left COVID and I said, it's like,
Correct,
it's this is who it's going to be, and you're either going to buy it or it's
I mean,
okay if you don't.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
great advice because how do you compete with the giants?
Right.
You're not going to compete with the J. Crew or whoever. Like, you just can't, right? So that's
and
incredible.
the Giants created their own lane. Like, what Ralph Lauren is doing is not what Tom Ford's doing. What Tom Ford is doing is not what Tom Brown's doing. And so these, all these legends created. And even if you go back to like the older Halston and all these other guys, Calvin Klein, who by the way is a graduate of my high school, and so is Mark Jacobs, and so is Tony Bennett.
How about that?
And so, but these, they created brands where like this is who the brand is.
Right.
This is who we're speaking to.
And
it's okay.
It's okay
if you don't fit in this mold.
Right.
There's other brands for you to fit into.
And then the other guys are like, basically, I'm going to take a little bit of this, that, and that, which is okay too, by the way. I'm not, it's not a knock on them, but it's just who it is.
And especially, look, coming from this whole custom clothing world, which has no personality, which has no point of view at all. Right. And I get it because a lot of these companies are crushing it financially, and they sell millions of dollars a year in suits to people that sit down with them, spend 3 hours, and design a suit from head to toe. That's exactly what I didn't want.
Right.
I did not want a client who was going to dictate what I had to do. I wanted the client to come in and buy what I've already created. Right. I was just measuring him for it, and that's what we did.
It was I can't remember the exact name of the company, but Atlanta-based, and me and my my business partner, we would have someone come to our office and measure us, and to your point, the idea was great because I felt like I made it, right? Like, this is the dream. I wanted that. I hated it so much. It was great for my partner because he was not a big fashion guy.
Sure.
And he was like, this is easy, convenient. I hated the fact that someone's measuring me and I'm on the phone or in a meeting, right? And it was like, there's no style sense at all, to your point. It was like, they're like, which one do you want? And you don't think, and you just pick, and it's easy, but it's a uniform.
Sure.
And you look like everyone else in the office. It's terrible. It's actually, so to your point, there's no identity at all. They're just that.
I mean, and look, and those companies work well.
Oh, yeah, great.
I mean,
it serves their purpose.
Right. I think there's, if you think about the masses is not into style or fashion or anything. The masses just, if they do buy suits, they're buying suits for a necessity. Yeah. As opposed to it being like a want or a lifestyle, choice where, I wanted to create a brand that was the client base or the demographic was, someone who was an enthusiast of tailoring and someone who had a personality and our house brand and our house aesthetic kind of matched their style. And so it's just like a beautiful transaction. It's a less transaction, it's more relationship, which is why, I've been in the business now 15 years and I still have clients from, 2010. Right. As opposed, and when I approach clients, when clients approach me now, I always say I'm a horrible salesman because, my idea is not to sell you, 100 suits this year and never see you again or burn you. I don't care if you buy one piece from me. I rather 100 clients that just collect pieces from me that in 20 years they can say, well, I still have that jacket required hat. Or I still have that ECOT dinner jacket that you made me. Right. As opposed to, people who you go to these people's closet and some people have like 100 suits, 15 from blank, clothiers, another 15 from another blank clothiers that they said, oh, I had a bad experience with them. And like, I just like stopped. And it's just like, I get it.
And you spend so much more money that way too.
Yeah. And effort.
And you're in the morning, you're just looking around rather than having your staples. Right. No, but I hear so many entrepreneurs with the pandemic story, right? Because it made them or broke them. It's one of those things. Like, people reinvented themselves so well. Right. Talking about, your story there. Personally, for me, I went through a similar thing where March 12th, which was a Thursday, 2020, is when we closed on a business, me and one of my partners. $140 million company purchased. March 13th, right? I was in a meeting telling the employees that we're going to be good. We're, hoorah, we're going to do this better, blah, 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 whatnot. I had my phone upside down, turned upside down, just the way I had it earlier. And after a couple hours, I flipped my phone back up. I had like 7 missed calls from my wife and text messages saying that don't panic. And I'm like, when you see that, you panic.
You panic, right?
Turn the TV on. The president had just shut down the country,
Right?
right? And to your point, I was at home for 8 days and I was going crazy. Get on a plane to do a deal, going to Cleveland, and there was we go to the airport. It was like just me.
Like ghost town.
Yeah, in Atlanta. That's just weird, right? Get on the plane. I was the first guy in the plane, and there's another guy all in the back. And I remember calling my wife. I'm like, I am fucking legend. Stay at the Ritz-Carlton for $29, right? And from there, it's all history because we're the only ones doing deals at that time. No one else. But that little step just changed everything. So you redefine the brand or your image. You get comfortable. Now that's what's become the staple of Angel Ramos.
Right.
Tell me on the business side. So it sounds like, just like a lot of entrepreneurs, you were the sales rep, you were the visionary, you were the accountant, you were the delivery guy, kind of all of it.
Thankfully, I wasn't the accountant.
Yeah.
Thank God I wasn't the accountant.
Yeah.
I've had the absolute blessing of having, I've had her for now, since probably like 2011 or some of that.
Right.
I have a girl, Kim Mieses, who works for me, and she's been with me for ages, and she's like my sister. And she was working for my business partner at the time.
Okay.
And she came on board, and essentially I said, if we can get to the point where you run everything back end and you just let me go be Angel,
Right.
like we're going to grow great. And we were able, it took us a little while, but we were able to create essentially a system where I was able to go out, clientele, network, be Angel
Be
around,
cool.
be around, go be Angel around the world,
Yeah.
and then flood it all to her. And orders were being, she was placing all the orders. She was, managing all my vendors and fabric and all this stuff. And I had my business partner, who's one of my best friends from college, who financed me through this whole thing. And it was great. Look, business is interesting because you grow, and you can grow organically with money.
Yeah.
And then you see bigger brands that just have large infusions of cash, which, obviously I would love that, but you have large infusions of cash so that you kind of grow quick. Now, here's the thing is, if you have a large infusion of cash and you don't know what the vision is and how you want to grow, I mean, one, it's horrible taking that cash at that time. And two is you end up blowing through that cash really quickly because you really don't know what you're wanting to build.
Yeah, you're trying to buy customers.
Yeah. And so now it's different, but the biggest leap of faith we took was, we go through COVID, and now in December of 2020, my business partner at the time comes to me, and he's my buddy from college, and he says, "Hey, what do you want to do? Like, they're talking about vaccines.
Yeah.
We've left the showroom you were in,
Right.
and now you're in this like interim space." I said, I think we got two options. If we're going to go out of business because the world's going to end, let's go out with a bang.
Yeah.
If not, we're good. Yeah. And so we ended up that's when we made that move on that Greenwich Village place, the storefront.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. And I say that humbly, not the rest is history because we crushed it. But, things have gone well since then, which then led to, I got acquired through a merger with another brand out of New York called Michael Andrews Bespoke. Okay. And so now him and I created this parent company called Marnie. Okay. And under that parent company, both of our brands sit individually. Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So is your business partner still in the business with you?
Yes.
An investor. Okay, good. So what's next? And you talked about a lot of fashion labels getting infused with a lot of capital. Tom Ford sold out.
Right.
A lot of private equity guys getting into the picture. What is next for the business side?
So again, so the when you have a brand that's named after you, there has to be a path to scale. Because if the bespoke world already is very difficult to scale.
I'm sure.
And as much as of an artist anyone wants to be, I mean, my goal has always been build something so you can get rid of it.
Right.
And you can live like you have never lived before. And so then I can also take care of my kids and hopefully my kids' kids.
Right.
And so, when I started this, and like the bespoke thing is tough because as amazing as it is, and as I've been able to travel the world and meet incredible people, everyone wants to work with Angel. And so I can't be everywhere at one time, and you can't scale a person.
Right.
Now, if you create a brand and you create a world around clothing, it's definitely scalable. And so we started doing ready to wear, which has thankfully been taking off. And the goal is that in 3 years, our revenue would be like at least 90 to 95% ready to wear. And then 5% is me working with like a select few of bespoke clients. I've already hired someone to start kind of taking over my bespoke business. But the idea is that I'm just solely focused on designing ready to wear, and that's all. So that someone like someone like, whether it's, I don't want to name names, just kind of, because it could sound silly, but so that in 3 to 5 years, someone's interested and says, "This looks great. We can, grow this even like 10x." And then they either, whether it's PE, whether it's us being, with Angel Ramos, the brand being purchased outright. That's, it's always the brand.
Of course.
The idea is that you're building something that's way bigger than you that can be purchased.
I love what you're saying here, and it's great to hear someone that you planned it out, because I tell people all the time, my clients on the advisory side, that always start at the end. If you know what the end looks like, of course things are going to change in between. But if you know what the end looks like, it's a lot easier to plan, and then you know what to do there. And with you, it is. I could imagine how difficult it is, because you're the face, like literally the face of the brand. It's your name. And again, for me, like if I wanted to shop from your place, I wanted to meet Angel. I want to meet the guy. Because it's a cool story now. And that's what gets people in. So, and that from that transition, because you're a really entrepreneur, one-man show, to become a designer or a CEO, it's, how is that journey going so far? I mean, because it's difficult for a lot.
It's good. Look, the tricky thing about the bespoke business is that most people who do bespoke and they start their own business, like you just said, they don't have an exit plan. It's like, I'm now on my own. So whether I used to work at Suit Supply, I used to work at Ralph Lauren, I used to work at Tom Ford. Now I've left there and I've started my own company. And so they're like, now I'm on my own. I have this freedom, which is great, right?
Which is fine,
Freedom is amazing. But then I don't want to do this forever. And now I want to be creative forever. I want to be a part of this forever. I don't want to work forever. And I mean, and
it's okay to say.
Yeah, and it's okay to say that. I want to build something that grows so large that someone would want to buy it and want to grow it even larger, where I'm just, I'm involved on the design part. And so, the idea is you have to have a vision that is so much bigger. I guess, look, it's okay if you don't. It's okay if you just want to kind of have like a mom and pop store and do, whether it's 2 million or 5 million revenue. My idea was, look, even though I want to grow something that does 100 million, and I know I can't do that on my own. And two is, once that, if we can get to like the 50, 100 million, you have someone who says, oh, we can get you to 500 million. And you have all these brands now that I'm so enamored by, that they might not be my style in terms of like what I would, purchase, or I would be like a customer, but like you look at brands like Skims and you go, oh my gosh, they took
Incredible.
undergarments, and it's worth
It's
an
amazing.
insane amount of money. And it's,
I mean, Suit Supply,
yeah,
right? Like Suit Supply, what they have done at that price point, it's incredible.
yeah,
Looks good, whatever. Is it something that you want to wear and tell people that, guess what? I have Suit Supply. No, you don't, right?
sure, right.
But it does the job.
But they put a lot of pressure on a lot of companies.
Yeah, and talk
yeah.
about changing the environment on how men shop now.
Right.
Again, if you're not a suit guy,
Look at Todd Schneider.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Todd in 2013, 14, whatever. He had boots with Ben Clymer and these guys at Hodinkee, right? Like
Right.
trying to sell their product, and look what Todd Snyder has become.
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's
amazing.
And I look at that and I go, man, that's great. I want to get there.
Right.
I want to get there and past
Right.
that. I want to get there and past that. And I think that I do try to encourage everyone when I get all these DMs or messages that people go, oh man, like, how did you start your own business? And I go, look, I started my own business by essentially, unapologetically just saying go.
Yeah.
Because you just have
No
to
plan.
run.
Yeah.
No plan.
Yeah,
you just got to run.
Right.
But two is you got to get around people that have built businesses before, because again, it's okay to have small vision, but if it'd be nice if you get to the point and you surround yourself with people who encourage you or who inspire to have like enormous vision.
Right.
Because me personally, I think that in this world, so many people get into this whole purist mentality of like, I just want to be in, I don't want to sell out. And I go, okay,
Which is fine. Good for you.
Which is
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
I want my kids to have an incredible life.
Right.
I want my wife to have an incredible life.
Right.
Like yourself, I got married young.
Yeah.
And we've been married this year 20 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
18 for me this year.
there you go.
Yeah.
And so I want to build something big for my kids. My tagline when I started the business was build something my kids can inherit.
Mm-hmm.
They might not inherit this, which is fine. I'd rather my kids be pianists and doctors and brilliant people and not,
Right. Yeah.
this. But I do try to encourage my kids to say, hey, if you want to start learning how to own your own thing or run your own thing, because not having a boss is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But also puts the burden of not having a boss.
right. Well, also,
Right.
There's also
You still have to pay the bills, right?
right.
So,
You could be a legend in a small world,
Yeah.
or you could be a legend in a small, tiny legend that's part of a giant world.
Right.
And so you look at all these people who are in the executives of like Ralph Lauren and Tom Ford, that they do great. I didn't have that. I didn't have the opportunity to have that path, so I had to take another path.
might be a blessing in disguise sometimes.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
What if you got that? The biggest thing that scares me in life now is that what if I got that job one time? What if I didn't get fired from that one job? Where would I be?
Right.
Because sometimes I feel like, I tell my kids all the time, the day you're very comfortable is when you should be very uncomfortable, because you just gave up on your dreams at that point. Because dreams are not usually, if you're trying to make it big, things are going to come your way. You got to change things up and just go, go, go.
I agree.
Sometimes you don't even know why you're going. You're just running.
Right.
And at one point you're like, I accomplished this.
Yeah.
So tell me some of the biggest setbacks, failures, setbacks, because you sound very entrepreneurial, which is really, it's amazing to hear, because a lot of designers and fashion and creative people are just creative. You're very entrepreneurial on that side too. So I'm sure you had major setbacks and some failures along the way.
Yeah, I had a lot of failures in the beginning.
Yeah.
Just from lack of knowledge and whether it be the maybe not arrogance, but the pride to not ask for help.
Yeah.
I had my first year. I didn't know that not that I didn't know that you had to pay taxes. I just didn't know how to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And so I remember the second year having a giant tax bill, but that thankfully I hired the right person who was able to kind of set me up and get me out of that. But I had failures like that and just getting burned by several clients and some big amounts.
Wow.
But I think you need failure. I think you need these failures to. I think when you fail, obviously it's a learning experience of not knowing. Knowing I'm not going to do that again.
Right.
Right. And especially when it comes to like the client bases, I think early on you're so desperate for revenue, and so you take anything and everything. And I had to get to the point where, again, you know who the company is and who it's not. And so that allows you to, it's a slower climb up to like what you want to build, but it allows you to really cultivate a beautiful client base that is in line with where you're trying to grow. Because in the beginning, I was taking all these different clients, whether it was an athlete. And I particularly now, I don't work with many athletes now just because athletes are, they're just trying to like get suits.
Right.
And, I think for us, we're not a suit company. We're a lifestyle brand.
Right.
And so we do work with some athletes, but I've gotten burned by some athletes in the past for large dollar amounts,
right.
$30,000.
Yeah,
and that hurts, it hurts. And
especially in the beginning days. That's
and it's tough, but again, you live and you learn.
Right.
You get burned, and you're not gonna put your hand over that fire again.
No.
And so you might get close,
right?
But you won't be putting your hand over that fire. So, we failed a lot.
Right.
We failed a lot.
Well, it's important, and hopefully, it's small,
right?
And you learn from it,
Yeah.
and never repeat it
There
again.
weren't any failures. Thankfully, there weren't any failures that either almost took us out, or it was a hindrance or a step backwards. It was small failures throughout the way, and again, I'm so thankful that I've been able to like really surround myself with just sound
people.
Business people. My friend from college, who's a brilliant business guy, has made 2 or 3 exits, and just how I used to think when I first got in the business,
right.
versus me spending 15 years with guys like him and other business guys. I think differently now.
Right.
And so you say, wow, you sound very entrepreneurial. I didn't in the beginning.
Right.
In the beginning,
right.
I sounded like some, this emotional, creative designer,
right.
who now I want to be someone like Tom Ford, who was able to create something that someone says, oh, we'll buy that now.
Right.
Great
exit.
And
where I'm not needed anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, even look at Tom Ford, it's been a while for him to find that right creative director who by now he has Hader Ackerman, who's a brilliant person,
right.
and he just crushed his first collection.
Right.
And so that's the idea. The idea is that how do I create something that, that can live beyond me.
Right. So, is there anything in the works and succession plan and a creative director maybe in the future that could follow your suit vision?
Yeah, I mean the quick answer is sure and yes.
Yeah.
The long answer is I'm so far from that. It's I'm just trying to get through, obviously having a slightly successful like online business.
Right.
To how do I get into like wholesale accounts? How do I get into Bergdorf's? How do I get into like Mr. Porter or
right.
Harrods? And it's like a step-by-step program.
The fact that you're not Mr. Porter, I don't know why. That's a complaint that I have. I'm a big Mr. Porter shopper.
Thank you.
I don't have a lot of time to go out and actually pick clothes and shop. And that's why I love, your brand. It makes it easy. The lifestyle thing really works. But why are you not Mr. Porter? That's a complaint I have. If Mr. Porter is probably not listening, but if
from
the company is listening, yes. I need to send an email out.
Yeah, it's typically God's ears. But if God heard it and he could kind of slip it in whoever ear at Mr. Porter, that would be great.
Yeah, like that would make it.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, by the way, what a great platform that is, right? To make it
is really good.
Luxury shopping online that feels like luxury.
Right.
The platform is incredible.
And not to mention their whole experience, I guess the unboxing experience and the experience you get from like buying something from them is
it feels like you just shop from a store.
Correct, yeah.
It's incredible. So biggest motivation in life, what is it for you? Because there's a reason why you're working these crazy hours, mad hours, and all over the world, literally. Yeah.
I mean, my biggest motivation is freedom. And it's the freedom to, I always say, I've not had a proper vacation with my family ever, or with my wife, because, when you run a small business, and especially when you're the face of it, when you leave,
Yeah.
you essentially it's dollars going downwards
For sure.
and the business essentially closes
Right.
for the time you're gone, which is it's tough. And so it would be, a dream of mine is the small dream is just take a proper vacation where like no one needs to contact me because the business is running.
Yeah.
And it's being ran and things are moving without me having to be involved. I pray that I'm like very close to that. Two is the freedom of just being able to, biggest motivation is to, create something so big that I can give back. Right. And that is financially. I've always had a big heart to be a financially generous person where there's need. And that's a huge motivator for me.
That's awesome. No, I tell people all the time that we don't take vacations. We work remote.
Right.
And it makes it worse because you get that anxiety and you feel like, you're stepping to the restroom or outside and you're on the phone just to get a call and you feel bad for your family at that point. You're like putting them in a decision and like, why did I just bring them?
Right,
makes it worse. I have always seen you wear the coolest jewelry pieces, watches, and whatnot. Is there anything coming in the future on the jewelry line or vintage watches and whatnot?
Watches, no, but in terms of like, I would love to do jewelry. Yeah. I'm talking to someone now who's a good friend of mine who has a very storied jewelry company based out of Rome, Italy. And he's actually, it's Patoki. They made me this ring, this signet ring. And the palm tree is what my last name stands for.
Oh, they're really cool.
And so I would love to do, pieces of whether it's like a ring, a bracelet, even a chain, cufflinks, studs. I'm working on those things. It's like I'm trying to like be, slow to move on those things as opposed to like, hey, we need more product.
Yeah.
Let's just do something. Because then you end up just creating stuff to fill accessories, and it's just like there's no heart behind it. And in my opinion, I feel like if people can tell, especially when people are buying into the brand because of you and like what you're enamored by, they can tell that you created something out of passion or you created something to fill a categorical void.
Right.
And they're saying, oh, that just doesn't seem like authentic. Right. And it just sits on your website for whatever. And there's a reason for that because they can tell. Because I feel like if you're creating the right brand, it's just like with me and Ralph Lauren. Like I'm so in tune, almost like I think spiritually might be a little too aggressive, but when I think of like Ralph designing, when I think of Ralph even designing home or the world he's created, I'm like, man, I get it so much, and I want to be a part of that world so much, so that when he designs something, I'm like, oh yeah, I need that. Like I want to have that, so that I can say that's a piece of him that I share.
Right.
I want that same thing. I think we all want that same thing.
Course.
We all want that same thing with whoever our customer is.
Ralph did it so well, and I feel like, again, I don't know Ralph personally or anything like that, but to your point, like I feel like all the different labels he has, and you could tell that what he's doing with it is like Polo, which has become kind of private equity-esque now, because the world needs it, and nothing against Ralph Lauren. But Double RL and Purple Label is like really his baby. You could just tell, like, talk about the passion.
Yeah.
Like when you walk into the Double RL store in Soho, there's a part of Ralph Lauren. You just feel it, the vintage jewelry and all that. It just feels like he did it right to that point. So and it's amazing how someone from that high level still touches his fan base.
Right.
And it's truly incredible. And I'm not a creative person, and when I see someone doing that, I'm like, that is so cool.
Yeah, it's. I mean, those are his babies.
Yeah.
Double RL.
Double RL
and just Purple Label was his dream brands.
Right.
Or sectors, I should say.
Right. To me, like, to that point, the Polo Bar is probably my favorite restaurant in the world. And it's not the best food in the world. It's not, but it's just the coolest place for me. Like, that's the place where before I go, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy something to dress up. It's like where men go to get glammed up, right? So it's, to Ralph Lauren's credit again, when you go to that restaurant, like men are like all giddy up first of all, I'm not cool enough like you to get into that damn place. And I got to get
You are.
9:00 in the morning, just have people call from the office and like, just get online.
To get the reservation. Yeah.
But, what experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite restaurants in New York. And
It is so cool.
I think people say, oh, it's not the best food, but it's not the worst food.
No, it is great food, by the way.
I think it's
great food. It's not a papaya hot dog, but it is great food.
It is a great, I mean, I just think it's more than the food there. It's the smell, it's the leather, it's the mood of lighting, it's the light.
Right.
It's, and then it's not only the burger, it's the plate the burger was served on, and
everything.
And that's when you've created a brand, because when people can notice every step of that.
I still go to the restaurant and I look around and look at and the bathrooms and everything, like
Correct.
every little bit of that place.
It's almost like you've entered his personal mansion, and
yes.
you're in his kitchen,
right?
And that's again, there's not many brands that have been able to do what he's done,
right?
And
well,
so you're
getting
strive,
there. Yes,
to even get a tenth of that,
right? So is there a restaurant opening in the future? Angel Ramos bar.
I don't know if an Angel Ramos restaurant sounds as cool as a pole bar.
Yeah. So tell me, if you had to just call it quits today, what are you doing tomorrow? What's the first thing that you would do? Besides, vacation maybe, or what's the first thing you do? You sold the private equity tonight.
I do this forever.
Okay.
I just love creating. I love being a part of cool things. I love helping people. Would I do this at a capacity that I'm doing it now? Probably not.
Right.
But I think that, I love doing this. It's not like, oh, I can't wait till I sell because I don't want to do this anymore. Like right. I'm in love with this business. I'm in love.
It doesn't
with
feel like work.
Clothing. No, this is a passion of mine.
Right.
Which is strange because it's not something that I've had forever.
Right.
But it's something that has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. I mean, I think about clothes and I think about, creating clothes and all day long.
Right.
Like I love it. I love it. And so, when I'm even traveling, when I'm on vacation with my family, I'm always looking at, whether it's people and I'm looking at clothing and I'm going, man, I like that. I'm looking at furniture. And so I love that I'm able to do this and be involved in a creative space. So, I mean, I'd keep doing the same thing. Again, either at the same capacity at a different level.
But around people and something creative.
I just like being around people. Yeah.
That's awesome. I see, you're a watch guy. Your favorite watch?
3940J Patek Philippe.
My favorite watch of all time.
Yeah.
So I have a 3940 R, the rose gold. Love that watch.
It's a beautiful watch. Great size.
I'm actually searching for the white gold, but that's a watch I feel like I could just get every metal. You can't go wrong. It's still great value.
Right.
Today. Favorite restaurant?
That's tough. I mean, it's so many different ways to answer that, because
if you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one, if I had to pick one, I mean, my favorite restaurant to go, because my wife is always like, oh my gosh, we go here so much. But look, my favorite restaurant is the Polo Bar. Yeah. I love taking people to the Polo Bar. Yeah. Because I think because of what the brand Ralph Lauren has meant to me for so long, right, and what it means to me creatively, when I take them to the Polo Bar and I explain to them what they should be feeling and seeing and what lenses they should be eating this food through, it's fun. Right. So I think, I mean, I've gone to tons of restaurants in New York, but by far Polo Bar.
It's funny, the podcast is brand new. You're the second guest. So Ronnie Madvani was another guest here, and favorite restaurant, Polo Bar.
Sure.
And I'm like, Ronnie, just get me in. So anytime you go to the Polo Bar, call me and I'll meet you there. Well, thank you, Angel. I know you have a tight schedule.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, coming.
This is my first podcast.
Is it really?
I've never been on a podcast before.
Huh.
And I watch a lot of podcasts. So I'm always watching podcasts. I would love to have a podcast one of these days. But I've always watched podcasts going, I can't wait to be on a podcast. So thank you.
I know you're tight on schedule, so we got to bring you back again. And the next time I'm in New York,
I'm back in May. Maybe we do another one.
Maybe we do another one.
Yeah.
I'll hold you to that. You're a hard man to get a hold of, so I'll hold you to that. And the next time I'm in New York, let's go to the
Please
Polo
do.
Bar.
Yeah,
We'll
got
hang
it.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
I just got to get a jacket from you. That's all. Thank you.
That's not necessary, but sure.
No, I have to. I just got to do it. Jacket's required, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.